so now, I want to jump to the topic at hand, right? It's like, okay, so now we know where Carolyn, you come from, and you've been through this up and down process with your faith. And so now, as we, as Christians, who have all hopefully gone through a process like this, right? Everyone's journey is a little bit different. Some have more valleys, some has more, hilltops, right? But hopefully we have gone through this authentic, real process of going through doubt, receiving God's love, which I also believe is the main message of Christianity, but then receiving it truly, right? And hopefully having experiences like you said with the hug, or even the bowling thing. I love that. It's just that it's not always have to be some fancy thing or something where people are like, whoa, that's amazing. But just that it was real to you. And it has to be something that is so real that even if other things come into the world, like you're not shaken, right? You're just like, no, that was real. Right?
Yeah.
Those kind of moments, those kind of memories, I would say, right, for us. Okay, so all that. So now as Christians, we've formed our faith in a sense, in that way, and then we now step into the world of like, how should we vote? What should we think on this issue based on what we believe as Christians? And for me personally, I kind of set up our conversation. It's been hard for me as a Christian because in the mainstream, I guess, media culture, I see that I don't have the same belief as the, I guess, the popular consensus of like Christians, and so I would say I'm more on the liberal side, and like my brother, he's not a Christian, and so when we just talk about things, he talks about the red states and the conservative evangelicals, and I'm almost like, oh, I don't know what to say, I kind of feel like I kind of feel judged a little bit because he knows I'm a Christian, and that's okay. Like, so we kind of back off and kind of not talk about it. So for me, it's kind of been a tension, and I want to give you a chance to share. Have you felt a tension in being a Christian and engaging in politics? You could talk about that.
Yeah, for a couple of decades, no. I had absolutely no tension. I've always been a Democrat. I never labeled myself a left because for some reason, being in the conservative church circles that I learned right is correct, left is wrong.
In terms of politics or just in general?
Just in general. I think people didn't distinguish politics or theology, but I just knew left was wrong. Yeah. So liberal was wrong. So I never used those words. All I knew was I was a Democrat. And I had no problem with that. And I would wonder, how can you be a Republican and a Christian at the same time? I'd honestly, because I was brought up in a Democrat family, and I was fourth generation Japanese in Hawaii, and we had this experience of having the white man come to Hawaii and take it over and start these big sugarcane field factories and take advantage of all the Hawaiians and then the locals, bringing all these poor people from Asia. So we always thought of the Republicans as the white man, the bad guy. So there was really no tension in my mind. And I thought, wow, how can you be a Republican and Christian? I don't get it. So
so it was, you're going about your life then, right?
Right.
That mindset and no tension. Okay.
Right. And it wasn't until in California, I think it was actually the Bush, George W. Bush. That's the first time I ever heard a conversation of well, you have to vote for him if you're Christian. And I wasn't planning on, but I thought, oh, I ought to really look at this angle about being a Christian and needing to vote for Bush. So I think, I want to say that I did. I was pretty moderate. Even though as a Democrat, I have voted Republican, and I had no problem with that. I think I might have even voted for Bush that first time around because so many people were saying, well, if you're a Christian, you have to vote for Bush. And I didn't quite get a handle on what they meant by that. And And then as the Bush years went on, I thought, really? Wait, really? And I started to think, I'm not going to vote for him again. And then, but there was still this narrative that I didn't understand. And then Obama, I thought was the best thing in the world. I just loved Obama, and yet a good number of my Christian friends were anti-Obama, and I didn't get it. And they thought all this corruption. To me, he had the best record ever in terms of being morally above water. Very, very admirable, I thought.
Yeah.
So I just kind of I had to deal with this, get a handle on this narrative that I didn't understand.
Yeah. So at that point, with the Bush election was the first time you had heard Christian Republican. That kind of thing, and you're like, huh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. But it sounds like you didn't totally reject it. You're like, oh, let me look into it.
Right.
Because what I could imagine the conversation is that the core beliefs of a Christian, if we as a Christian church can all agree we are, which we all have, that would then, it's like you follow that and then it goes Republican, right? And if someone says that, I think it is worth examining, saying, oh, if it is true, then that's something worthy to know, right?
Yeah.
And so you looked into it.
I looked into it.
Okay, and then Obama, and then so you start saying at this point that you have been looking into it and you start seeing attention. Is that right?
I did, okay. Yeah. And I started to really wonder what they're looking at. What are these Christians looking at when they have so much criticism for Obama and they thought that W. Bush was the best guy ever? And I think when it came to a head for me once, or when it became obvious, was when Mitt Romney was running against Obama. And I remember somebody saying how we have to consider voting for Romney, even though he's a Mormon. And I thought, well, here's Obama, he's a Christian. What's wrong with his Christianity? And I thought, that's so weird. You would vote for a Mormon over a Christian? And here we're talking about Christianity in the government, right? And it's like, what's wrong with that? And that's when I got very suspicious, and then I was okay for a while, until Trump, and this was the the monster,
about.
Yeah.
You know what the thing with the Mitt Romney thing, what I think I realize is that, so it might not necessarily, the connection between Christianity and Republican may not necessarily always be a Christian thing.
Yeah, right.
Because if Obama was Christian, then maybe it's like you go with the Christian thing if that's what we believe is like the most important thing.
Right.
But for some reason it was go with the Republican. So
right.
Just like kind of interesting, right?
It is interesting.
Like, is there another thing at work? Is there and then when those things happen, and I think I know you because we've conversed in the past, and hopefully our listeners can hear us too. You're someone who will critically think about things, right? Even your faith, right? That's why you went through the ups and downs.
Right.
Okay, so then you're kind of thinking, okay, so what's going on? So then now we kind of get to this season.
Right. Yeah.
So what's going on in your mind these days around this area of Christianity and politics? Could you share? I know there's probably so much to share, but kind of. Yeah.
Well, we're obviously in a stronghold. There's obviously some kind of stronghold with the politics and Christianity, evangelicalism. To the point, it's quite obvious that when somebody's behavior is that destructive, divisive, even evil, I would say, at times, and to have this tight bond with evangelicals, and I'm not talking about churchgoers, although they are. I'm talking about leaders.
Okay. So
these are passionate, godly, what I would consider, godly leaders in the past who preach lordship, leave it all behind to follow God.
Like in the same way that you would go into South America thing.
Yeah, selfless, right. And then, but saying we have to vote for Trump, you guys, we have to. And I was like, what's going on, you know? So there is obviously some kind of funky thing going on. So I did, it was a lot of turmoil I was living through daily through the past 3 years, just hearing so many people that I held very highly, but take this adamant pro-Trump posture. And I would just almost daily think, am I wrong? And am I wrong? You know, just every day. And finally something just broke in me, and I just thought, that's not right. You know, I don't care if it's all these people, all these 50 people that I was probably 20 plus, maybe 50, that I revere.
Yeah.
All of you, but I don't think that's right. I just don't think. And then when I said that, and I think I broke something.
Yeah.
And suddenly I started to see, I felt like a freedom, and just, and it just started to be more verbal, and more gutsy in the way I described what was going on.
Yeah, it's like you broke free of something. Right?
Yeah.
Wow, and so these, so it sounds like there's that struggle time, and then there were these people who you revered because of their spiritual journey, their testimony, so to speak, right? Like what they shared to the world about their relationship with God, their commitment with God.
Yeah.
And that's something as Christians we would say, that's something to uphold, that's something to strive for, that's a role model.
Right, yeah.
And to say, oh, I'm going this way, it's like, I can see that's tough.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of overcome. Okay, so now that you've crossed that place, right, and I can see there's levels to that, and that's tough. Like, what have you discovered? Like, as you kind of say, oh, so what is that thing? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's always been a clear path of my cognition within myself, coherence within myself, as far as my relationship with God and my political beliefs. Okay. There's never been any question about the match.
So
it's always been coherent.
And when you so coherent, like it's clear, right?
It's clear.
Is it like
integrated,
or
it's integrated.
Okay.
There's never been any tension that how can I be a Democrat and a Christian? There's never been that.
Yeah.
So I just realized. So I always thought was I think I don't understand. There's a narrative I don't understand, so I assumed it was my bad.
Because you have that scholarly part, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe there's something I'm missing. Like
yeah.
In this chapter of the Bible or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my belief is that God sent His Son Jesus in order to express His love to the world, in order to save the world, and as evangelicals, I think John 3:16 expresses the central gospel. And so that we also will proclaim Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life. You know, so He is the way to come to God. God initiated His love. He also created us, the human, in the very beginning, in order to be in relationship with Him. We messed up, and we suffered for it for years. But God came, and by sending His Son, He provided a way to redemption at that moment and in the future, which is where we're headed. And we are participating with Him in that welcoming into the future, and welcoming people into the future, into the kingdom, building the kingdom, welcoming the future. You know, the kingdom of God on earth. So it's very clear in my mind.
So there's this concept. I just kind of recap what you said, right? That God created man messed up, right? And we're kind of like, when we understand that, we make mistakes, we're not perfect, and we hurt ourselves and other people, like, you know, which is just what happens. You and I both do that. And then God provided His Son, John 3:16, to save the world.
Yeah.
And then there's this story, I think what, I want to point out is a story of redemption, right? Of taking something that it was just at a bad place and then redeeming it, giving it value. And so we are now in that in between, that process, that journey of having that full value. In a sense, I guess, it's not maybe the perfect way I'm saying it, right? But I like what you're saying is that there's this journey now that after Jesus has come and shared that message and has done that work of redemption, the job of the church is to kind of usher that in, to be a part of that movement, right? Of what God is doing, which is redeeming mankind and through His love.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just kind of sharing.
Yeah, I want to actually add a few pieces that I think are important. That with our choice to do wrong, we became a product of the curse. So we could not be in fellowship with God. So we became the product and lived for generations in that curse which formed those culture, basically. The Hebrews had a God-ordained culture as Israelites that he designated. Abraham would be a blessing. He would be blessed, but for the purpose of blessing others. Genesis 12:1. So there's this sense, we're all living in curse, okay? So when you get the law, okay, we're dealing with how to live with a cursed culture. And in part of the curse, and it does say that woman would be subjected to man, or would seek, I can't remember, but would be seeking the man's approval, basically. And so that has been the structure of society. So, and it formed society to the point where Jesus came, and so he turned the whole thing upside down and started valuing the women, the poor, those that were least valued. So he came into a totally cursed society. Yeah, and
so it's not good right now,
right?
Before Jesus.
Right. So we have to acknowledge that was a curse, and to an extent, now Jesus came to break the curse, to fulfill the law, and he broke the curse when he died on the cross, and rose again. It's all done. It's broken. So what is redemption? Well, the redemption is Galatians 3:28. Now there is no Greek nor Jew, male nor female, slave nor free. And so all that was defining humanity before, he broke that. Yeah. So we have to understand it's been broken, like in chronological time. It actually has been broken. And so this is a gift to us to live in the non-cursed world. Right. So to bring the non-cursed world into our cursed society. And that's the good news.
So it's not that it's like we have to work to get there, right? It's like it's been done.
It's been done.
Right?
Yeah.
And then maybe another way to say it is that it's like a new reality. Right?
Yeah.
We were once under this other thing that was a curse, and now we're under this new thing.
Yeah.
Which we can call it grace or God's love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so as a redeemed people,
right,
how do we now live?
And so this is the thing that we need to tell people. Like, you're not cursed. Hey, you're not cursed. We're not cursed. That's the good news. So we have God's love. So that to me is the gospel.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not, hey, you guys, we shouldn't have prostitution, or we shouldn't, we shouldn't have gay marriages or whatever. It's about, hey guys, Jesus came to bring life and love, and we're not cursed, okay? Okay, so that's the message.
And that's you as the heart of a missionary.
Yes,
going back to the beginning of what we were talking about. Right?
Yeah,
that's God's love. That we're not under that anymore.
Yeah.
And Jesus is the key, right?
Right.
He's the one that did it.
Right.
So I'm with you there, right? I'm with you there that as Christians, that's the reason, like I said, I was an atheist before. Why did I choose to become a Christian? No one forced me, right? It's because this message that we're just kind of talking about is the thing that really set my life right. It gave me hope. It gave me purpose. It gave me something to talk about. That's really what we're talking about here. And so when we bring that conversation into the public arena, into politics, I think our hopes is that that would be the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So
I can actually add back, because going back to your question, so we became, well, under the curse, society and particularly the Israelites became more and more legalistic, because that's what they had. They had the law, so they're trying their best to uphold the law. Now Jesus came, he said he came to fulfill the law, and not to, looking at his life, he didn't come to make more laws. He came to accept those that were on the fringes. So he, in fact, criticized the lawmakers, the law keepers, Pharisees, Sadducees, and saying, no, it's these children, it's this woman, the prostitute that was wiping his feet. This is important.
So he was sharing a message with a lot of the people on the fringes who maybe they weren't all clean and like following all the rules and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and he was exalting them and saying, really, they're better off than you guys, who are making more rules, and you're trying to hold me to these rules that don't make sense. Like I came to not to break the Sabbath, but to fulfill it. So so he's calling extraordinary amount of attention to what the poorest, what the fringe people are doing, and just saying to the lawmakers, this is not right. Yeah. So so what we have done, and where this intersects politics, if I may be blunt, I think what a lot of the lawmakers have done, I won't hold this to be Republican or Democrat, but when we start to construct laws in order to keep people in place, I think that's the method that Jesus actually went around. So he didn't come as a lawmaker. He didn't make more laws to make more hoops for people to jump through. He came with his love, and that's all. They didn't, prostitute, didn't do anything. He already loved them. He loved them, and he healed those that asked. So when we start to make laws that restrict and start to define certain people as okay and not okay, as privileged and not privileged, or when we start to put judgment on a certain segment of society, we go right back to not only the Pharisees, but to the curse. And we pick from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, because we're assuming the position of the judge. That was the root of sin. So that's what we're doing when we start to create laws that separate and start to judge a certain segment of society.
So, thank you. Yeah, I think that that brings to mind is that as human beings, what we do is, I think the human nature is to, once we're accepted into a group, whatever group that may be, we want, that's like our new reality, right? And if we want to expand that new reality, we put out like, this is how it should work, right? In order to join, like you need X, Y, Z, right? Rule 1, 2, 3. And so my thought is maybe as a Christian church who have entered, hopefully all like authentically, genuinely into God's love, we then, maybe our church is saying, in order to expand and for more people to enter into God's love, it's like you have to do all these things, which is kind of opposite of what you're talking about.
Yeah. Of
love first. Yeah. And then from there, I don't know. And that's just kind of one thought I have that could seep into the politics and
yeah. Well, it's what Jesus did. Definitely is accepted first, and then people were loved into changing behavior.